So welcome again. This is the first session in a series of 3. We're going to talk about how to survive the holidays, how to survive the end of the year. And the idea for this is that oftentimes this time of the year, whether we're religious or not, whether we celebrate Christmas or not, or New Year's or whatever it is, it tends to be, the end of the year tends to be a really busy time for all of us. Especially for us as moms and dads, parents of autistic kids, neurodivergent kids. So before we start, I want us all to just arrive and take a breath, okay? I will be speaking very briefly about who I am, but I will let you know right now that I am a mindfulness teacher, and I always like to start my presentations with just a really, really short and very easy mindfulness exercise, which is literally to take a few full breaths. So I invite you to either close your eyes, or you can keep them open. It's totally up to you, or you can maybe just cast them downward slightly. And just breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. And oftentimes, just by doing this, we feel a release. So let's do it again. Just breathing in, breathing out, and just feeling the points of contact of our body to the chair or the sofa or the place that we're sitting in. And then just one more time, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, and inwardly thanking ourselves for making the time to be here or to listen to this afterwards. So if you close your eyes, you can open them. This is just a great quick exercise to tune into our bodies and sort of signal to ourselves, okay, here I am. So my name is Magui, and I am a mindfulness teacher. I'm also a coach for parents of neurodivergent kids, and I am an autism mom. So my son, Adrian, who's currently 13, just turned 13 2 weeks ago, has a diagnosis of both autism and ADHD. And all the work I do is really for us, not so much for them. They need all the support they can get. We all know that, but so do we. And we oftentimes don't seek it and don't really appreciate how much we do need to be well, how much we need to work on reducing our stress and increasing our well-being so that we can connect to our kids better. And that's a photo of me holding this book, which is unfortunately only in Spanish, but I am working on getting it translated into English, and it's basically about atypical motherhood. So this is a 3-part series. I don't want to do it as a webinar or a course. The content itself is not going to be probably all that new to you, but it's very much an invitation to carve out some time to ask ourselves some very important questions, because most of the overwhelm during the holidays comes from just going on autopilot, and just doing the same as we have been doing for many years, or even if it's slightly different, it's still the same amount of stuff. And so I've divided it up into 3 sessions, which I know is a bit of a time commitment, but the idea being that I only speak for the first 25-30 minutes, and I set out some of these questions and I challenge some of these assumptions, so that we can have the other half of the meeting to brainstorm together, to ask questions, to chat, and to simply share. Oftentimes we need that extra motivation of hearing other people talk about these things to really think it through for ourselves. So in this first session, we're going to talk about the importance of identifying what we want to do and what we need to do. And that is a real stock take, because again, oftentimes we feel more stressed during the holidays because of all the things that we're piling on top of everything else, right? So let's start by kind of going back to the drawing board. Okay, what do we really want and need, and how is that or not compatible with what our child or children need? In the second session next week, we will look at ways to adjust that. So having done that stock take, what do we release? What do we let go? What do we change? What do we negotiate and kind of compromise on? And how do we communicate it to others, which can be quite a thorny issue around the holiday season. And then the final session, I will kind of give you some more practical how-tos and some very easy mindfulness sort of practices that you can carry out and do. And this is where it requires you to commit, which is why I wrote commit, because you kind of have to keep that in mind to be able to do it. So I know that you all know that holidays really do tend to feel very stressful. But why is that? And in doing so, and teasing out why is it that we feel so stressed in the holidays will give us quite a lot of clarity about what it is that we might need to change or at least question. Okay, so I've divided it into two parts, for us and for our kids. So for us, there's a weight of expectations around what we do, when we do it, how we do it, with whom we do it, where we do it. There's a lot. There's just a lot. There's also spending time with people that we don't get to see that often, or that we simply don't like. There's a lot of relatives that we don't like and we don't get along with, but somehow we're thrust together with them during the holidays, and that can create a lot of stress, understandably. And I'm not saying, you don't need to see anyone. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, okay, let's become aware about how much stress is this, how much of a stress factor is this in our lives? The logistics of being hosted or hosting, when we have, kids, and when we have kids with additional support needs, the issue around schedules kind of being blown out the window. We have less control over them, particularly if we were being hosted or if we were leaving our house to go somewhere else. We're usually on other people's schedules. And then the issue of exhaustion. We're just tired because oftentimes we sleep less, or we sleep at different times. So that kind of just moves our biorhythms around. We tend to socialize more, we tend to drink more or eat more, and all of this has an effect on just our pure basic sense of well-being, physical well-being. For our kids, there's higher expectations to socialize and to be around people, just more parties, more events. There's increased sensory demands, lights, sing Christmas carols, more noise, different foods, more people that want to hug them. It's quite an overload. There's more people or unfamiliar people visiting or being visited. So again, people that they're just not very sure about because they don't get to see them all that regularly. There's less structure than day-to-day school life, and there can be a lot of confusion and or just rejection of highly ritualized rules and events. So just remember that the holidays are highly ritualized times. Things are done this way, and of course it varies depending on the culture, depending on the family tradition. But our neurodivergent kids, our autistic kids, don't always understand that if we don't make it explicit. And sometimes when we make it explicit, they ask, but why? And we don't necessarily always have a good reason. Oh, just because that's the way we've always done it. So again, kind of putting yourself in their perspective and understanding that actually a lot of these things are pretty random, or can be seen as random by them from their point of view. So on the plus side, because it's not all negatives, doom and gloom, otherwise why would we even bother? Holidays can also be an opportunity to slow down and do less, particularly if we can take some time off, to therefore rest and recharge. But again, it depends on what we do with our time off, to appreciate each other's company in the sense that, okay, there's less demands in terms of you have to be here at school and I have to be here in the office. Well, we can spend a bit more time together. So we can therefore explore activities with less of a sense of rush, less kind of, timetables and schedules. Although that in and of itself can bring challenges. But again, from our point of view, it is an opportunity basically to spend more time with our kids and our loved ones, and to maybe explore and listen to some of their interests and be less rushed about kind of spending time with them, basically. So it is worth being mindful of how we take on the holidays. And again, the invitation here is not to think of holidays are something that happens to me or to us. No, you're an active participant. What do you want to make of your holidays? And for that, we need to, again, sit down and think, what do we want and what do we need? And here is where sometimes it gets a bit complex, with when we have autistic kids, or when we ourselves might be on the spectrum, because we need to think of, okay, for me, for ourselves, for our kids, our autistic kids, and then for our family. So if we have non-autistic kids, or we have, our spouses or our partners or other people that live with us. And what I mean with our family, when I refer to our family in the next few slides, I mean the people that actually live with us day to day. I don't mean the extended family. I'm not even considering them right at this particular point in time, okay? I want us to really focus on us. So for that, to kind of know what we want and what we need to question. And we need to question for now, because again, I think this is a really good exercise to do every year. Things change, and what might be something that we want to do, or that we feel like we have to do this year, might not be something that we want to keep doing next year, or vice versa. Okay, so let's start with some questions for us. Do I want to keep doing what I've been doing in terms of meals, in terms of hosting, in terms of gifts, in terms of shopping, in terms of going out and socializing, in terms of tidying up and cleaning or maintaining the house in a particular order, in terms of drinking, in terms of so many different things, right? Do I want to keep doing what I've been doing? Here, the idea is it's easier to think about what we've been doing, and on the basis of that, to question it sometimes, than to come up with brand new things from scratch, right? So just think about what your holidays have been like for the last few years. Do you need, you personally, to keep doing all the things that you have been doing? Do you need to do it yourself? Because again, oftentimes our default position is, well, if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. Okay. So A, do you really want it to be done? And B, does it have to be you? Can you delegate something? Can you ask someone else to do it? Can you ask for help? And then 3, if you want to keep doing something that you really enjoy, but doesn't work so well for your autistic kid, how can you change it, modify it, so that you can continue enjoying it to a certain extent, even if it's not to the full extent, and he or she can opt out or not be so negatively impacted by it? And there's all kinds of examples, like music, Christmas music, you might love it. And again, there's no judgment here. You might like Christmas carols, or you might hate them. But if you like them and your kid hates them, or the other way around, your kid loves them and has them on repeat and is always listening to the same 3 carols over and over, and you hate it, what are some negotiations, some accommodations, some changes that you can agree on, so that it doesn't drive you nuts, or it doesn't drive your kid nuts, whether they only listen, or you listen with headphones, or whether you only have a certain time of the day when you can play it on, or whether you only have a certain amount of time that you can have the music on, or where you only have the music on in a particular part of your house. Or that's just an example, okay? But again, it seems very obvious, but we often don't do it. And we feel like, well, it's either all or nothing. There's always an in-between way. So some questions to think about in terms of our kids, our autistic kids, given their age, their profile, their skills, their preferences. You know them best. What works and what doesn't work. And again, we all have this information, but we oftentimes don't necessarily know what to do with it. And a lot of it has to do not so much with the thing itself, but more with the environment. What type of environment does my child need? What types of environments trigger them or just make them cranky? Or I've worked out that after we do this, after we go to this house where they have, again, a gazillion lights, he then comes back home, he holds it together, but then comes back home and has a meltdown. Well, that's probably a good indication that that's just not going to that house full of lights is maybe not the best environment for your child. How much structure and consistency does my child need? And here, I can tell you, in my case, I love having empty days where I wake up in the morning and I don't have to necessarily do anything specific at a particular time. To me, that's freedom. To my child, that's kryptonite, because he needs to know what's happening. Otherwise he paces and he can get dysregulated because he doesn't like not knowing what's happening, especially for a whole day. And then his default position is just to watch TV or ask us to play on his Xbox. So oftentimes we need to negotiate, we need to compromise. We need to say, okay, well, my child needs a lot of structure, but I don't want to have the structure. So why don't we work on giving him or her a structure, but keeping my day, my planning of the day a bit more open? How would that look? And then a set of questions for the whole family. So do we have to do everything together or not? What would be the minimum of togetherness that we want to keep? Is it at certain meals? Not every meal, but maybe, a New Year's Eve meal or New Year's Day meal or Christmas meal, or, there are always creative ways of mixing it up to meet everybody's needs at different times and to different extents. Okay, I'm not saying that there's some kind of magical rule where everybody gets to have what they have and it's all compatible, amongst itself. No, because oftentimes to compromise, somebody needs to yield at certain times. But it's just worth making all of this explicit, because otherwise we just operate on the basis of what we've already done. And so it can be done. And I'm just giving you some examples of things that we have changed, and we've changed them in different directions, and we have gone back, and then, we've changed them over the years. It's been 8 years since we've had the diagnosis, and we have changed whether we host or not. Sometimes we have, sometimes we haven't. Whether we travel to family or not, whether we stay with family or not, whether we cook traditional meals or not, when we eat, when we go to people's houses, when we have opened gifts. Last year, we didn't open our gifts until like the 6th of January, which is like 12th night, because I'm originally Spanish, and we were traveling. So we didn't open them on the 24th or the 25th, and we didn't open them at New Year's. We opened them way after, okay? And then when, sometimes you have to change up when you get up and go to bed. How much cooking I've done, how much decorating I've done, and how much shopping and gifting I've done. And I have changed these things so many different ways and so many different times. And sometimes all it has done is given me information about, okay, this doesn't work, but that's fine. I've then been able to readjust it again the following year. There isn't one way of doing things that is always and forevermore going to be the ideal way, or the way that it should be, even when it's not ideal, but it's the way that you think it should be ideal. Okay, so in this first session, I just want to invite you to imagine what would feel good, what would it look like, and to start there, to start deciding and kind of making changes and adjustments there at that point of what it would look like, because it would feel good. You cannot please everyone during the holidays. You cannot even please yourself all the time during the holidays. Okay, so I know everybody knows this, but it has to be said. We have to remember and remind ourselves that this is actually the case, because we internalize that, especially as mothers and fathers, that we have to be everything to everyone, and that we have to give the perfect Christmas or the perfect holiday to our kids or to our elderly relatives or whatever. And that just simply isn't the case. And I think we just need a higher dose of realism. And you and your family can do things differently without feeling like you're losing or missing out. And I think this is a really big one, because there is an emotional attachment to doing things a certain way. And even when they don't actually make you happy or make you less stress, and in fact they add to your stress, but we still say no, but it has to be this way, because otherwise then I'm not celebrating whatever holiday the way it should be. So anytime that you catch yourself saying it should be like this, or it needs to be like this, because of some ideal or because of just some tradition, it's just worth questioning that. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying questioning it. Give yourself permission to try doing things differently. Having a neurodivergent kid is a massive kind of pass for doing things differently, and for having a very good reason to do things differently. So use it. You do have the right to change your mind and to change traditions and change them again next year if you want. And I have done this so many times. There have been years where I did not put any Christmas, only a couple of years where I didn't put Christmas decorations, because I do like them, but I didn't. In those years, I just didn't feel like it, so I didn't. So again, you have the right to change your mind and to try different things, each year. So I'm just going to finish off by inviting you to do this exercise, which is what I said before. It's to visualize an enjoyable holiday, whatever that may look like to you. And start by asking yourself, if I could take away what stresses me and or my child the most, what would it be? What would you do away with? And if it's not doing away with it entirely, how would you change it? And then how would the holidays feel without that, or having changed that? So that is what I wanted to share today. There's a lot more that I'm going to cover in the next 2 sessions. I didn't want to over cram it, because I really, again, this is not going to work, because it's not some theory. It's not some 5 top tips. It's really the work of deciding how you're going to do things differently. And to do that, you have to start by identifying what you're already doing and whether it's working or not. Okay, so this is what today was all about. So I'm going to stop the recording.